Mega Man X4 is not only one of my favorite games of all time, but also the origin of my namesake and general love of the character Zero. Well, yes, it's true I didn't actually beat the game until I was a grown-ass man. I still grew up with the game and played through to the end multiple times. Always as Zero. X had 3 games to himself in the Super Nintendo, and Zero was always the better character anyway. Come at me. That said, if I'm going to do a Mega Man X4 retrospective video, which I am, you saw the title, I do have to still include X's half of the game, so in sticking with the theme of a split narrative, I've brought in the X to my Zero.
By the sun and the moon, by the shield and the sword, I call upon thee, my Honda Accord! So yeah, that was my summoning spell to infiltrate this video. What's up, everyone? My name's Tyler, or Ty if you prefer, and I do all sorts of random content on the internet, both on my own channel and with friends like Justin here.
That was a weird intro, but fitting for you. So let's get into it. What do you think of Mega Man X4, Ty?
That's a good question. Mega Man X is a sequel series that is beloved by many, myself included. It's a natural evolution of the simple yet effective run-and-gun platforming of the old-school Mega Man games before them. But there's something about the X series that stands out. While people regard this side of Mega Man in high esteem, a good chunk of these games weren't all that great. My good friend Justin and I have had many arguments about how X5 was a good game or not, and you probably know his stance on it by now.
And I haven't even gotten into how bad these levels are yet, and how little motivation you probably have to struggle to beat them anyway.
Last year, I made a tongue-in-cheek April Fool's review on it as a troll post, and we had some laughs about it. So let's go over why the 5 in X5 is for sucks. Now he's asked me to help review one half of his favorite X game, Mega Man X4. The reason being, this is the first game where you can choose to play as either X or Zero, and both have their own side of the story at large. Justin has the Zero side cover since it's on brand for him, and I'll take the helm as X today. Truly, this is the XZ tank cannon of video game crossover reviews. If there's one thing we can agree on, X4 is one of the most fun and replayable games in the series. It's fast, it looks and sounds great, and is incredibly fair with its challenge. I have a few nitpicks here and there, but they hardly hamper the experience. When it comes to my time spent on this particular game, I never really grew up with it. I had X5 as a child, and I thought it was fine.
That's why you give X5 a pass. Nostalgia goggles.
No, I don't. And this isn't about X5, focus. It wasn't until X4 was released on PlayStation 3's digital store that I finally got to play it for myself, and I had a fun time going through it. Nowadays, I practice speedrunning in a Zero, since he has some combat and movement options that can tear this game a new one. I only beat this game as X once before, so I figured this video was a good excuse to do it again. I took this collab so seriously that I learned to clear the X campaign months in advance, and I've cleared it 3 times in preparation.
Now I feel bad. I invited you to do this, and I'm mostly just going off of memory.
When it comes to providing content for my friends, I lock the fuck in. So without further ado, let's boot up the old PS3 and start up Mega Man X4. Okay, establishing shot done, time to record off the Legacy Collection. If you play a Mega Man X game, you know exactly what to expect out of its stories. Bad robots led by an evil Mr. Clean, and access to make them cut that shit out. However, because it's a PS1 game, X4 has a bit of added presentation with full motion videos in all their compressed PS1 glory.
It's about the Maverick Hunters, General. They are far too eager to please the humans and continue to hunt down the Reploids.
For those of you who don't know, this game released around the same time as Mega Man 8, which also celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the original Mega Man. Just like in that game, it has animated cutscenes with the same voice acting quality.
I don't know where this energy came from, but you cannot let it fall into Dr. Wily's hands. You must recover all the energy immediately, Mega Man.
I put quality in air quotes because the voice acting in both these games is so laughably bad that they've been mean to death for the last few decades.
But where is Dr. Wily?
That's a good question. We may be able to locate another energy emission from the radar room. When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wily.
I too share the general sentiment. Take heed, we have no other choice. Let us fight valiantly, with courage and pride, without fear, for we are the Repliforce.
The story begins when the general of an army of Reploids known as the Repliforce meets with a mysterious hooded figure. It's obviously Sigma, pulling some evil nonsense for the fourth time, and they don't try to hide it. He tries to instigate a war between Reploids and humanity, but the general shuts it down in the most bored refusal I've heard in a while.
You are dismissed.
What?
I will not betray the humans. Remove yourself from my sight. My business with you has concluded.
One day later, X is dispatched to quell a giant Maverick attack on the city, which leads to the intro stage. The point of the intro stage is to acclimate the player to a base control scheme, while also setting up the story from that point onward. X control is pretty straightforward. He can run, jump, dash jump, and shoot 3 different charges with his X-Buster. The controls are incredibly responsive, and the ability to dash jump really helps get a move on, and makes the first half of the stage a breeze to speed through. At the end of this section, X meets with a fellow hunter named Magma Dragoon, and the two narrowly escape before the building collapses. The second half of the stage takes place in the aftershock of the Maverick attack, resulting in the off-screen deaths of many humans and Reploids alike. This section teaches you about how you get insta-killed at a moment's notice via falling debris or bottomless pits. So you have to adapt to the challenges using either your newfound or familiar movement options. At the end is a Maverick causing the problems, a giant dragon mech. This boss is pretty simple, just dodge his attacks and shoot from a distance until it explodes. With the Maverick defeated, X meets the Colonel of the Repliforce, who happens to be named Colonel. X asks if his army had anything to do with this attack, which the Colonel refutes. X then asks for the Repliforce to peacefully stand down, lest they be considered Maverick for seemingly tearing on their human creators. Colonel says the Repliforce would rather die fighting than surrender. Riveting dialogue with Oscar-worthy voice performances. This leads to the General, who happens to be named General by the way, publicly announcing the Repliforce's independence from humanity and establish a new society where Reploids can thrive. Unbeknownst to them, but beknownst to Sigma, this is exactly his plan, as he secretly planted a few Maverick underlings in the Repliforce to stir the drama pot even more.
I'm glad you're handling the backstory, because I never paid that much attention. I just like doing flips and shit as Zero.
Now 8 big Repliforce teams are causing trouble in various areas, and it's up to X
And Zero. Mostly Zero.
to defeat them all and put an end to the coup d'etat. But he's not alone, as an ex-Repliforce soldier named Double acts as his mission control. Why is he fat? He's a robot. Does he even have any metabolism? Look, I know Reploids have the freedom to choose their own path in life, so why did he choose to double dip and double baconators? Anyway, Double Meat Patty is here as moral support, and not much else. From here, you have the choice to enter one of 8 stages, each with its own Maverick waiting at the end. We'll start with Magma Dragoon, the guy we met earlier.
Also the best Robot Master in the whole Mega Man series.
I'm more of a Storm Eagle guy myself, but he's the coolest one in this game at least. He betrayed the Irregular Hunters and fled to the... Wait, Irregular Hunters? It's supposed to say Maverick Hunters for the English translation, but for this one screen, they left the original Japanese word irregular. I'm sorry, I just find that so funny. I'm just imagining if X and Zero were the main characters of Irregular Show.
Now clean up this mess or you're fired!
Speaking of fire, this stage is full of flaming rocks and lava plumes that can really mess you up. Getting past all this isn't too bad if you just move forward the whole time. The second half has you in a ride armor to cross molten lava that can otherwise kill you upon contact, but it's also pretty handy against all the enemies being thrown at you. You could even bring the ride armor into the fight against Magma Dragoon himself, if you want to conserve some life.
Since Zero is mostly close range, I always use the right armor to beat Magma Dragoon because his attacks hit like trucks, and Zero has very touchy hitboxes.
Looks like somebody doesn't know how to do the dash cancel trick. Like Justin said, this guy is pretty aggressive with how he attacks you. Fitting since he's wearing a Kuma's bead necklace and throwing Hadokens at you. He even does the Shoryuken. This dude's a Street Fighter stan. Dragoon can be overwhelming at first, but a calm mind and a steady hand will help you prevail in this fight.
Or choosing him with the dash cancel trick if you're a dirty cheater.
It's called skill, but only us speedrunners can do it. How's that? Was that sarcastic enough?
No, that was good.
After the fight, Dragoon reveals he was one of the planted agents who instigated the coup because he really wanted to fight X. Even his reasoning is Akuma-coded. Too bad he died like a chump in the end. Our reward for beating him is the weapon Rising Fire, which is okay, I guess. It's a strong fire projectile that only shoots straight up. I end up using this a few times where hidden heart tanks are boss weaknesses, and the former can be found in the next Maverick stage.
Zero, on the other hand, gets a literal Shoryuken move, so once again he proves his superiority in this game.
Yeah, it proves that he rips off Ken. Anyway, we're doing Web Spider next. It's recommended to start here if you're playing as X, since the stage and boss are both straightforward, but I'm following the usual speedrun route to save time on backtracking for certain upgrades. Also in this stage is the first Dr. Light capsule, where you get the leg parts that lets X air dash and glide. These abilities will come in handy later, but what bothers me is what Dr. Light tells you here. For context, X was the last robot Dr. Light created before he died, but he knew the world wasn't ready for X's greatness and had him sealed away for at least 100 years. That is until X was discovered by Dr. Kane, who based all of the Reploids on his design. The capsules you find in all 8 games have pre-recorded messages of the good doctor, who should know nothing about what's happening in each respective game, which leads me to believe this isn't actually pre-recorded at all. Is he AI or some sort of Force ghost? X, you must go to the Dagobah system. There you will find Dr. Wily. Now, where were they going with this? Oh yeah, Web Spider. This stage is pretty simple, just watch out for these spinny guides in the bottomless pits accompanied by waterfalls and logs from Super Mario Bros. 2. Web Spider is a bit annoying since he's barely on screen and throws electric webs that deal a lot of damage and freeze you in place for a few seconds. Though I did learn a well-timed charge shot can hit him while he's off screen, so that's a nice pro tip right there.
Man, X gets all the little tricks to make bosses easier. That's why Zero is considered hard mode.
The second half of the fight is a lot simpler, where he decides to stay near the middle of the screen and throw babies at you. This is where poor parenting gets you, exploding violently. Lightning Web is another meh weapon I barely use. In fact, I'm mostly going to use it to grab the light capsule in the next stage.
I'll admit, Zero's weapon kinda sucks this time too. It's just an electrified forward stab that freezes Zero in place and is more of a liability than it's worth most of the time, except for the one boss it's good against, but it does make a mushroom split, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, I do know what you're saying, because I wrote that joke. Moving on, Storm Owl is like if they took Storm Eagle from X1 and made him both nocturnal and lame in comparison. This stage has you navigate on top of aircraft carriers that are shooting at you orbital space lasers. Fortunately, you have a ride armor that can air dash and has a homing shot that tears through whatever stands in your way. The second half of the stage is a bit of a shitter with a hallway full of deadly spikes. There's a light capsule above you, but you need the platform created by Lightning Web to get up there without dying. This took many tries to get right, but I was rewarded with one of 2 arm upgrades. The first one lets you charge your buster with 4 moderately sized balls that you can shoot at your leisure. It's alright, but I'm sticking with the other upgrade where the fully charged buster fires a big ass ball of doom that lingers on screen and does chip damage. You can only use one of these at a time, and can switch between them by revisiting this stage later and, God forbid, making it up here again. But no matter which one you go with, you can charge special weapons to perform stronger attacks at the cost of more weapon ammo. This is great for the mini-boss, as Charge Rising Fire melts its health bar faster than an ice cream bar during this heat wave. Storm Owl might have been a dumb design, but he gave me the most trouble so far. He loves to fly around the screen, disappear, and randomly spawn in one of these 4 corners. Guessing where he's gonna be is RNG, and if you don't guess correctly, you're getting wrecked. I actually died a few times on this guy, but observing his behavioral patterns and timing my charge shots just right narrowly scored me the win. His weapon is lamer than he is, though. It shoots little tornadoes in different directions. That's about it.
Zero actually has an easier time with this guy. I'll talk about that more later, but the weapon does still suck. I agree.
Next up is Frost Walrus, the obligatory ice stage. There's quite a few collectibles here, including the EX tank, which increases your life count from 3 to 5 when you game over. I should bring this up since I forgot to do that in the last stage when I died a lot. Each stage is divided into 2 sections with multiple checkpoints, and whenever you die, you start from the last checkpoint. But if you get a game over, it starts you at the beginning of that level section. Bottom line, lives are meaningless because the checkpoint system is extremely generous. This could have made some of the more infuriating parts of the SNES trilogy a little better, but for the PS1 games, it makes the EX tank completely pointless. Aside from that, this level's okay, not too much to talk about. Not even Frost Walrus, who looks big and menacing, but is a total cakewalk. The weapon is once again just okay. X just farts out an icicle and calls it a day. But the ice shits do serve some purpose soon.
I actually like Frost Walrus' stage quite a bit, but again, I'll talk about that later, I guess.
After beating any 4 stages, Double Whopper warns you the Colonel will challenge you to a duel. It's time to duel!
As Zero, this encounter is just a cutscene, so it's time to watch.
That was a good attempt, I like that. But for X, it's a mandatory boss fight you have to go into no matter how prepared you are. This guy was a pain to fight at first because he teleports all over the place like a cracked up Nightcrawler and hits like a truck. Once I figured out the pattern and whittled his health down with the newly acquired Frost Tower, I managed to squeak by with a win. He says the Repliforce is still not done, and X laments he has to keep fighting because Lord knows he's been done with this nonsense since the first game.
What are they even fighting for anyway?
Shh, we'll get to that. Back to business with Jet Stingray. His stage is all about the jet bike introduced in X2. You might die here a lot if you don't know it's coming, or if you missed the heart tank or energy tank respectively. This is also the first stage in the X game where the Maverick actively attacks you before his boss battle. Aside from that, his boss fight is really easy if you have Frost Tower. Icy Spark Mandrill Syndrome has him afflicted as well. I do like he yelled like he's in Dragon Ball Z though. X gets Ground Blaster, which travels across the ground like Terry Bogart's Power Wave.
I feel like that comparison is more obscure than the thing you're describing. Anyway, Zero just gets an air dash here though. I don't have anything to compare it to. It feels like something that should have come from a Light Capsule, but Zero doesn't get those because Dr. Light didn't make him.
Dude, spoilers! Next is Slash Beast, which has you fighting on top of a moving freight train. It's a pretty easy stage you can just blitz through. The boss battle is also pretty easy to abuse with the Ground Blaster, which turns the fight into a pretty pathetic cycle. It's a shame, he's the coolest boss design next to Magma Dragoon, and he's a total wuss. His weapon is also a cool idea that's mostly wasted. It shoots twin projectiles in opposite directions, making it pretty situational.
I have the most trouble with Slash Beast as Zero. I usually save him for last. But his weapon isn't that great, so I don't mind leaving him for last. It's just a slash forward while dashing, but it's hard to predict how far you need to be from an enemy to make contact.
It also invalidates the dash cancel trick, so yeah, not a fan of it either. Anyway, I took this opportunity to backtrack to Magma Dragoon stage to get the heart tank, as well as the light capsule that's otherwise blocked off if you don't have Slash Beast's weapon. The armor parts reduce damage dealt by half, and pressing right trigger lets you do the Nova Strike, which is an invincible dash attack that you can only use sparingly. I never used it, sorry.
But that's another ability that Zero gets from a Maverick instead, so it could be worse. Zero's isn't the exact same move, and I won't even try to pronounce it, but it's still a super attack with its own ammo meter. Basically the same.
Splay Mushroom is next, and it begins with a neat winding staircase full of cheap enemies. Very impressive for PS1 graphics, and you can bet your budget cuts that Capcom's gonna reuse it for X5. This stage can be fun to blaze through, though the elevator section near the end is a big pace breaker. Split Mushroom has the same pattern resetting exploit as the other bosses, and it's a complete joke with Lightning Web. His weapon is the Soul Body, which just created Copy X, but not like that one.
This is another one where Zero gets basically the same ability, but his is an X5. Gotcha. In this game, he actually gets the best ability, or should I say abilities, because he gets the double jump paired with a 6 spin slash that trivializes most of the platforming for the rest of the game. So I always try to do Split Mushroom as early as possible.
The spin slash also reminds me of Super Star Wars, so I'm a fan. Last up is Cyber Peacock, who awaits us inside the computer.
It basically just steals the aesthetic of Cyber Peacock and Dark Necrobat to show that you're basically inside the computer.
In the computer. It's so simple.
The gimmick of the first level section is to make it to each checkpoint as fast as possible. But these yellow devil testicles, or whatever these are, will slow you down if they hit you. Depending on how quick you are, you're going to be ranked with B being worst and S being the best. You want to get S or A rank for all of these as X to collect the heart tank, energy tank, and the final light capsule.
For Zero, you can just nail the first two and not care about the last one, but real gamers still go for the S-rank hat trick.
Speaking of hats, the armor set is now complete with the head part. This lets you use weapon shots endlessly, and honestly just looks cooler. I like the 4th armor a lot, actually. This armor is so cool that they used it also in the beginning of X5, with most of its perks intact.
It sounds like the only good parts of X5 are the ones they reused from X4.
I know, right? It's great. Cyber Peacock is pretty simple. He teleports behind you and you reset his pattern by using Soul Body to corrupt his processors. You wouldn't download a Peacock. Not sponsored by Peacock. His weapon is a weird aiming reticle you can lock on enemies with and shoot lasers. It's probably the weapon I use the least. It's, as the kids say, mid.
As much as I hate to say what the kids say, Zero's weapon is also mid. It's that Giga Crush Super I mentioned earlier. It's really only good for stun-locking Storm Owl, and even then it only works like 4 times, so it's barely worth it. Half the time I just fight Storm Owl without it, like a real gamer.
With all 8 Mavericks beaten, we're in the endgame now. Double Cheeked Up informs us that the Repliforce is mobilizing and is preparing to wipe out humanity with an orbital space laser.
Which is also reused in X5, just saying.
You're not wrong. But also, I gotta ask, they talk about how trash humanity is in this series a lot, but aside from a few people, do we ever see any humans? This is a major plot point that nobody really addresses in the X series, so why do they bring it up if we only see a handful of humans in the series?
I think the point is that the player is human, so they want you to sympathize with your people.
Meh. They do this better in the Mega Man Zero games, but for the X series, we just gotta take their word that humanity is worth saving.
It's really not, though. Hashtag Sigma did nothing wrong.
Downfall of humanity aside, the first end stage has you raiding the Repliforce's main base, where their troops are scrambling and getting ready to go to space.
Show me what you've got.
After some platforming as usual, we fight the Colonel again, and it's the same fight as before. Only this time, we end up killing him. However, the main forces have already made it in their space station, and X elects to go there on his own, letting Double Stuffed Oreo be in charge of Hunter HQ. Little does X know that his friend's full name has been double-crossed the whole time.
Hey, Double, what's the matter?
Jesus Christ! I'm glad those weren't humans, otherwise the age rating would have gone up from this scene alone. Yes, Double Trouble is a spy working for the Maverick boss to force the Repliforce to act drastically. It also doesn't help that his more evil side is a cocky sadist that really doesn't like our circuits. He's basically a typical troll in the YouTube comments.
You're gonna get hurt, X!
We face him at the end of the first section of the next stage, and it's a hard-fought battle.
If you're Zero, the fight is different and, spoilery for now, but Double Dragon over here makes Zero's fight look like easy mode for once.
It's a close fight, but we managed to smack him enough times to make him cuss a swear. You watch your language. Yeah, I know, that's rich coming from me. The second half can be a bit tricky to get through if you take the high road, since the most fearsome enemy in all of Mega Man, Spiked Wall Man, awaits if you're not ready.
Wait, what was the name of this boss? Oh, you suck, Wily.
At the end is the General, who explains that he wishes to build a utopia for Reploids and break free from the shackles humanity put on them, even if it means global genocide. He's obviously reluctant to do that, and in his own words,
"My fate is sealed. I have no choice."
This battle can be a bit of a slog if you don't know how to approach it. With X, you can either zone him out well-timed charge shots, or charge Twin Slashers for more damage.
With Zero, it's a lot harder to get damage in, since General's only hurt box is on his head, and he's the size of a whale. I generally hug the wall and wait for him to move close, but it makes the fight take so much longer.
See, when I play as Zero, I usually hug the wall, but then dash cancel his head until he dies.
Yeah, I get it. You're a god gamer who knows how to dash cancel. Quit bragging and go back to talking about X.
Fine. The fight is easier with X anyway. And with that, the general is defeated, but the laser weapon is unguarded, and some schmuck is using it on their own. X personally goes to stop whoever's pointing the oversized cat toy at the Earth, but not before the obligatory boss rush! Every Mega Man game has this, we're not showing this shit again. Mega Man Exodia! Obliterate!
It's not possible! No one's ever been able to call him...
Exodia! Obliterate!
I don't always understand your Yu-Gi-Oh! References, but that was cool. Carry on.
Thank you. We square off with the mysterious Cloakman, and surprise, it's Sigma! I swear, this dude is slightly less persistent than Team Rocket and a lot less endearing. Final boss time, and this Sigma brought his Grim Reaper cosplay. But I played Castlevania, so I brought plenty of holy water. This fight is piss easy, but then he asks if I'm ready for round 2. Phase 2 is a bit harder since Sigma is much more mobile, and his attacks change depending on where he throws a scythe in relation to where you are. If you're on the wall, he does an eye laser attack that covers the whole ground, leaving the wall behind him as the only safe zone. If you're on the ground, a bunch of boomerangs spawn and will sneak in and hit no matter how you dodge. Trust me, go for the laser strat.
This fight isn't that bad once you figure out you can kind of control what attack he uses next, but it does suck that any damage you take carries into the next phase, and since Zero takes more damage than X, I always play this fight very carefully. It's also why I never beat this game as a kid, because I couldn't figure out the pattern, and when you die, you have to do the boss rush over again, which famously prematurely ended a Let's Play that I did 10 years ago on this channel.
Wow, that sucks.
Yeah, it was very frustrating.
I don't think I can do it. Shut up, Shia. This game.
Tremble with terror, you are finished!
The final phase is easily the hardest part though. The melted face and the goofy looking gun robot each have their own health bars, and you have to whittle them down as they spawn in. This thing actually does look like the XZ cannon too. Wow, that joke came full circle. Meanwhile, these floating heads are shooting lightning, fire, and ice at you, making you struggle to conserve precious health. But I decided to throw caution to the wind and tap to my own form of Ultra Instinct, beating him on the first try without thinking. Sigma then does his best Michael Jackson impression before he blows up, a whole 22 years before Dante had the chance. In a strange last-minute change of heart, the General sacrifices himself to stop the laser weapon, and the whole space station is destroyed along with it. On the way back to Earth, X receives a Discord call from his best buddy Zero.
But Zero, what if I become one of the Mavericks?
Don't ask such a silly question. I'm breaking contact now.
Wait, Zero!
To be fair, the original intention of the scenes is much more serious and impactful, and there's a retranslation mod for the game that fixes the butchered language here, but the English version is funnier and more in tone with the weird writing in the rest of the Mega Man games.
Yeah, and we're just judging the game we were given. And this game is a blast. Pun completely intended. Intend your puns, cowards. It's got great control, fair difficulty, solid level design. It's no wonder why we like it so much. I have a few minor gripes like the lackluster weapons for X, the lame story, and slight design oversights like the EX tank, or the final boss kinda overstepping the difficulty curve. But those are small potatoes compared to the more problematic titles in the series.
Like X5.
Oh, give it a rest. Mega Man X4 is a game that's on par with the first Mega Man X for me, if not better. I'm glad I can legit beat this game as X instead of blazing through as Zero for the 20th frickin' time. I love X and all, but dude, Zero's got it all in this one. And his fully playable introduction is honestly the main reason to play X4 in the first place.
And speaking of Zero, it sounds like it's my turn to jump in and talk about his side of the game. Zero's story starts off right away with some very confusing dream imagery, including a not-so-mysterious silhouette of a certain Doctor telling Zero to do evil, some quick flashes of Sigma, Zero's hands bloodied from probably doing evil, and then he wakes up with a headache. how a robot can get a headache, I don't know, but maybe he just had some wires crossed.
Or maybe he played one too many levels in X6. That's enough to make anyone go crazy.
The actual game starts basically the same as X's, as he's dispatched to Sky Lagoon to find out what Repliforce is up to. He cuts through some enemies and walls to reach his old pal Magma Dragoon, and then teleports down to the surface to survey the aftermath of the destruction. The story and dialogue are nearly the same as X, just with some of Zero's edgier dialogue and a lot more melee combat. So it's better, basically. Zero is kind of hard mode though, as I said before. The hitbox for his saber is pretty small, and a lot of enemies pop up at the last minute, or swarm aggressively. So couple that with the fact that he takes more damage than X, and it's kind of mean. You'd think the frontline fighter wouldn't be so squishy, but I guess that's the price he pays for great hair. I wouldn't know.
At least the difficulty is more balanced here than in later games. The enemy placement is more generous, and they don't throw everything but the kitchen sink at you at once. Zero might take a bit more damage and only has a melee weapon, but I wouldn't consider him hard mode, just another way to play the game. But as you said, he is super fun to play.
Totally, and the fun factor is worth a bit of a higher difficulty curve. Anyway, while the intro level is the same, Zero finds Iris instead of Double, and she's the far superior navigation companion.
Iris? You mean like the Goo Goo Doll song? Oh, wait, she's actually named after that. Now I wonder if Double was named after that Foreigner song. This series really does like its music callbacks. Not as much as JoJo, but you probably wouldn't know about that.
I know JoJo. She was big in the mid-2000s. Can I move on?
Go ahead, I've had all I can stand from this joke.
The actual dialogue scene doesn't really play out any differently, as you fight the giant robot that attacked her and then meet
the Colonel!
But their interaction does differ, as we find out Iris is his sister, and he has a much more cordial rapport with Zero. But he still refuses to stand down, and is just generally suspicious for someone trying to prove he hasn't turned Maverick. After Colonel pieces out, the same cutscene with the General plays out with the same bad voice acting. It's like every character in this game has a mild speech impediment.
That, or they're recording in their mom's basement and trying not to wake anyone up.
Remember, this is neither about insurrection nor rebellion against our human creators.
Back at HQ, Iris pleads with Zero not to fight her brother, but as a hunter, he must. So he heads off to the 8 locations highlighted with Maverick activity, including Magma Dragoon, who apparently dissented, but it's just mentioned in his level description, weirdly. I don't know why they barely established him in the intro, just to have this anticlimactic turn in one text box, but just like the X run, he's our first stop, so we'll probably find out soon. Now, for the most part, I won't be going through these levels in as much detail. That would be redundant, but I do want to share some notes about how Zero's run is different and what order I generally do the levels in. So let's take out this irregular traitor. Zero's playstyle is generally faster paced than X's, as he dashes and slashes his way through the levels, so starting in the volcano can be a little tricky, with a lot of obstacles to quickly avoid and surprise enemies requiring quick reaction times. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward and makes for a solid starting level. Plus, as I mentioned before, the right armor in the second half gives a big leg up against Magma Dragoon, who is a much harder fight at close range. So the right armor kind of acts as a second health bar, just whittling down his health until it explodes, and then carefully finishing him off while he shouts Street Fighter moves at you. And speaking of Street Fighter moves, Zero's weapons work differently too, as barely any of them require weapon ammo, and instead just augment Zero's moveset, more like Samus's suit upgrades in a Metroid game. See why I like them more? They're still functionally similar to X's attacks, but can be used infinitely and are usually more functional, like the flame uppercut he gets in this case.
I agree. The abilities Zero gets from bosses are superior. Like the flame uppercut rips pretty much every Robot Master in half. I wouldn't say Zero has any bad abilities in this game, honestly.
Oh, I would. One of them is literally just an air dash. But we'll get there. My main goal with a Zero run is to get to Split Mushroom as soon as possible because of the awesome double jump and spin slash combo I mentioned already. So, depending on how ambitious I'm feeling, next is either Frost Walrus or Web Spider. Frost Walrus is the logical next level because his weakness is the flame uppercut, but Web Spider isn't that hard and is the weapon to use against Split Mushroom. So for the sake of optimization, let's squash the spider first. You could just start the game with him, but it's good to get the flame uppercut first to burn away a few level secrets. One thing I always thought was weird as a kid in the first section of this level, because I never did an X run, was this empty room where the Dr. Light capsule is supposed to be. I don't get why Zero doesn't have any equivalent upgrades, or even just like a wall blocking off this room, but instead it's just there. Just thought it was worth mentioning. This is Zero's first fully playable campaign, so I guess they didn't quite integrate him in as seamlessly as they would in later games. Anyway, like Time Engine, there's not much to this level. Follow the water, do some jumping and slashing, and kill a bunch of bees.
No bees!
They don't allow you to have bees in here.
But you can burn some trees for minor shortcuts and Zero's first health upgrade, so it's still good to do this one early. He needs all the health he can get. Spider-Man is a decent boss design, and he's a little harder as Zero because you have to dodge the stunning webs and then swoop in close to attack, but it's still not a super exciting fight once you get the pattern down. I already mentioned the electric stab move you get here is very situational, but it works extremely well against Split Mushroom, and that's all that matters, because he's next. This level is kind of weird, because half of it sucks for Zero, and the other half feels made for him. The spiral staircase part is just annoying, with enemies that bounce in from off-screen, and others that are armored from the front, so you try to dash slash and just hit a shield. Then, you get to a very vertical section that would be annoying for X, but works super well for the overhead arc of Zero's saber. The mini-boss is also annoying if you don't know the hook, because it destroys parts of the ground as it attacks, which admittedly is interesting for a mini-boss. So you have a ticking time bomb of floor tiles to finish it off.
You could also tear him a new one with the Flaming Uppercut or Dash Cancel, but that sounds more like a tie tactic.
Still found a way to get the dash cancel in there. The second section has another health upgrade, but is otherwise more of the same. The vertical section is a super easy but cheap elevator that expects you to dash quickly to avoid getting crushed, but once you know the pattern, it's not surprising anymore. This level is also one of the few in the series without the traditional checkpoint room before the boss. It features a vertical checkpoint room leading up to the boss chamber. Kinda neat. Split Mushroom has some tough to avoid attacks, like creating shadow clones of itself that bounce around the small arena, but once you can basically stun lock it with the electric stab, it's just like 2 rounds of that same attack pattern and then he's done. But Zero's moveset really shines at this point, as the double jump and spin jump attack trivialize most of the platforming in the remaining levels. Yeah, we'll move on to Frostwallers. It doesn't really matter where you go next, but Ty barely talked about this level, and it's one of my favorites, so I want to spend some time on it.
There's a reason I didn't really talk about it. Ice physics typically annoy me a lot of the time, and I spend my time shooting on the EX tank instead, so go off, King.
I like it when you call me King.
I generally really like ice levels, not sure why, but Chill Penguin in X1 is another all-time favorite level, so maybe it just set up a bias. But this is also one of the more dynamic levels in the game. There's a lot of platforming variety, as it starts with a fast dash across cracking ice flows over spikes as enemies skate along after you. Then it goes to a section with a bunch of ice blocks housing frozen enemies and bombs with multiple paths to get through it. The weapon energy tank is also in here, but Zero barely has any need for that. I just grab it for completion. But I do like that you have to literally carve your own path through this section. I imagine it doesn't translate as well with X, though.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
The final section is a more straightforward platforming corridor, but there's these birds that fly in sometimes and try to freeze parts of the level if you don't kill them fast enough. It's gimmicky, but a good gimmick. I just always remember the very different parts of this level, and it's got a cozy aesthetic, especially due to the attention to background detail. When you first drop into the level, there's a giant enemy encased in ice, which longtime series fans will recognize as the frozen robot corpse of Bilzard Buffalo from X3.
Bilzard Buffalo!
There's also a lame mini-boss about halfway through the level that's only elevated by the frozen Chill Penguin chilling off to the side. And to really drive it home, the boss is actually Han Solo frozen in carbon. Not really, it's Frostwallers, a massive Hulk that showcases the increased sprite scale allowed on this new 32-bit system. He has a cool design with ice tusks and angry eyes, but he's a total pushover if you use fire on him. I do love how this giant brute does a little burned scoot across the floor, but the insanely long stun lock makes the actual fight into a joke, even if it is memorable with a lot of personality.
I'll agree that Frost Walrus is a cool design at least. Heh, cool. Nice pun.
I already said the weapon here isn't much to sneeze at, even if it sounds like a sneeze, so let's move on to the next one in the weakness order. Jet Stingray. But first, another campy story cutscene to mark the halfway point.
Colonel! What? I'm disappointed in you, Colonel! Ah! What do you think you're doing? It's not too late. Stop the coup now!
Man, Zero's voice acting is bad. This cutscene is okay, aside from the bad voices, as the sword fight between Zero and Colonel is actually really fun to watch. But nothing really happens. Iris breaks them up, reminding her brother that Zero saved their lives, and then they all just walk off like, oh yeah, conflict over.
My favorite part of this cutscene is Zero just yelling, "Prepare yourself!" and then starting the fight. He's basically me when I invite Justin to play fighting games.
Except I look way less cool fighting back.
Brutality.
That
Sub-Zero wins.
didn't work correctly.
You know what? It's actually better than intended, in all honesty.
Okay.
Speaking of less cool, Jet Stingray's level sucks, but isn't the worst of the 4 speeder bike levels in the series. You'd think this is where I'd shit on X5 again, but it's actually X7. But almost everything about that game sucks, so at least compared to the rest of the X4 levels, this is still easily the worst. Between the slow scrolling of the level and the fairly zoomed-in perspective, it just leads to a lot of cheap obstacle damage and even cheaper deaths from hazards and gaps you can't see until it's too late. I can't imagine anyone getting through this perfectly on the first try. You pretty much have to memorize what's next to react appropriately. And it doesn't help that there's upgrades in each level section that are so poorly placed I end up having to die multiple times on purpose just to time the collection right. But I refuse to pass up both a health upgrade and an E-Tank, even if it sucks to grab them.
Look at it this way, at least it doesn't drop you into a hole when the level starts like in X5.
Making fun of X5 is my bit, but you're right.
Listen man, I don't hate X5 as much as you do, but I can still make fun of it every now and then.
Fair. But I repeat, this level sucks. I can love the game and still have critiques. Nothing is perfect. Maybe the concept would work if there were more of the level visible at a time, like a zoomed out perspective or just a widescreen mod, but the way it's structured by default is unfun at best and broken at worst. It does get bonus points for the second section where Jet Stingray attacks you the whole time. I agree that's pretty cool. But it'd be cooler if there was a persistent health bar so that the more you hurt him here, the less health he has during the actual fight, to incentivize putting in the effort. But even without that, it's still a unique mechanic. The fight itself is annoying because his weakness weapon is all but useless against him, at least a Zero. I didn't really talk about it before, but the ice attack you get from Frost Walrus is a downward thrust, and the boss stays in the air almost the whole time, spitting out sperms that go after you. The spin attack is the real MVP here, even if it just slowly chips away at him. You can double jump into the ice stab, but it's a hassle to time it without getting hit by his sperm minions, and it just freezes him invulnerable for a while. It's not actually that helpful. I've actually had some runs where I just get this guy out of the way first, because the early E-Tank and health are great, the level is just a speeder bike, and the boss can't really be hit by his weakness anyway. But his ability is just an air dash, so there's not much to gain from beating him regardless, just do it whatever. Honestly, the main problem I really have with Zero's run is that there's not a set boss order. His ability gains are more general utility, so I tend to just do them in order from easiest to hardest to beat for me personally. With a few exceptions like Magma Dragoon before Frost Walrus, Cyber Peacock before Storm Owl, and always Slash Beast last.
I hate that level.
That said, next is Cyber Peacock. I don't really have anything to add from Ty's run. Yes, it's a little easier because you only need to get S rank in 2 of the 3 sections, but also I have a hard time not getting hit by those cyber testicles, so sometimes I still have to restart the level a few times, which sucks. This is where it helps to put the level off, because the double jump and air dash do come in clutch here. I actually like the second part of the level, with a simple little gravity flipping mechanic. but it's done much better in Gravity and Tanyan's level in Mega Man X8, even if that boss is stupider, and I'm not even sure I said the name correctly. Here, it doesn't really fit the cyberspace theme, so it's kinda random, but I'm still a sucker for a good gimmick.
Random in the internet? Haven't heard that before.
I haven't focused much on actual Maverick designs in this game because honestly they're mostly just fine, not super memorable, but I do really like Cyber Peacock's design. It's just a shame I barely see him, because the flame uppercut phases him out as soon as he becomes visible, and it makes the fight over as quick as it starts. But speaking of boss designs that are just okay, now that we have the one weapon Zero gets that uses weapon energy, as well as the nearly useless weapon energy tank, it's time to tackle the Temu version of Storm Eagle. This level is also one of the worst in the game, for Zero at least. It starts with a super slow ride armor that almost feels like more of a hassle to use than it's worth, and a level design that's boring and straightforward. It's basically the same pattern of platforms and enemies like 3 times in a row, before leading to a mini-boss that's just a weak point on a wall and some cannon fodder enemies. Easy. Then the next section is a bunch of screen nukes over a spike pit, which is insane for a melee character, and what looks like a secret passage up a spike wall that Zero can get to using a carefully timed double jump, but it's where another Dr. Light capsule would be, if I had one. Another few mostly empty hallways, and then the boss room with little fanfare. I already mentioned how easy this guy is with the new screen nuke we picked up. You don't even have to aim or anything, so let's finish the last level. I promise I still love this game. I just saved the levels I liked the least for the end. And oh boy do I hate Slash Beast. First thing to note, the Z-Saber is purple now. Ooh. Yeah, Stormy's power just enhanced the attack. They really kind of phoned it in on Zero's abilities for this one. But I only ever need the double jump and the spin slash anyway, so I don't care. Second thing of note, this level is basically just Storm-Owl's stage during the day, and on a train instead of an airship. You do get to fight the train, but you can't suplex it, so Final Fantasy VI did it better.
But in Final Fantasy VI, it was a ghost train, so it's actually not that impressive.
That means it's incorporeal. Being able to touch it at all is impressive.
Sounds like someone who doesn't know the trick to suplexing ghosts on a daily basis.
We've lost the plot. Back to my train of thought. The second half is a little better since you get a ride armor that can destroy parts of the train, which is also how you get the last health upgrade. But it's still just walking forward for 90% of the level, and it goes on too long. But you would think that means the boss is easy too, right? Not for Zero, it isn't. From the moment he flies in and scratches a crate in half, you realize this is melee versus melee. His attack pattern is chaotic and he doesn't have any stun-locking weaknesses, so it's all just about the 5 Ds. And trying to get some hits in when you can. I've gotten better at fighting him over the years, and it is one of the more fun boss fights in the series since it requires actual skill, but I still hate it. Also, Slash Beast is just such a generic name. Do better.
This fight is definitely more fun in Zero. Since his X, he's always just stun-locked, so you never get to see his coolest moves. You thought the Street Fighter references ended with Magma Dragoon? Dude, he does Guile's flash kicks.
But with that, we're back to the endgame, which isn't that different from X's for the most part. Iris pleads for Zero to not fight her brother, but he does it anyway. And after a pretty easy first level section that plays to Zero's fast melee strengths, we get our first actual fight with Colonel. And it's a fun sword fight, with a fair balance of attacks Zero can avoid and counter once you get the patterns down. Probably one of my favorite fights in the game, honestly, because his moveset doesn't feel cheap, but it still requires you to pay attention. But anyway, Zero murders Iris' brother, because apparently you can't just incapacitate people in this world, and he finds out that none of it matters because Repliforce already went to the space.
The space?
Zero gets back to HQ to find out that Iris went to space with them. It'll probably be fine though, right? Zero somehow teleports directly into space for the final level, which is named Final Weapon because Death Star was already taken. I do like the look of this place though. It's nicely detailed and doesn't look like a brain rot video like the last levels of X5. There's not much to it though, and it pretty much immediately leads into the first mini-boss. Hey, what's Iris doing here? There's really no explanation in the frankly awful dialogue. She's holding some ominous glowy ball and just uses it to transform after finding out Zero killed her brother.
They don't explain it in the game, but that's actually the Colonel's energy core, and she fuses with it to become a giant robot version of herself.
I don't know why the game wouldn't actually explain that crucial detail, but thanks to the clarification, nerd.
You're welcome.
The fight is annoying, though, because you can't attack her directly. You have to hit the crystallized Pokeball floating above her, but it only appears after you've futilely attacked her a few times and spawned annoying cannon fodder minions. The first time fighting her, you might not even realize that you're doing anything. It seems like it's broken. It's not that the fight is hard, it's just lame and has no explanation, and it's also a little confusing. Like, why doesn't the game tell you how and why she transforms?
Dude, it's a Mega Man game. They almost never explain anything.
Well, they should explain why they never explain anything. Anyway, instead of talking it out, Zero fights Iris to death also, and the most infamous cutscene plays out, as she laments about her hopes that Repliforce would do good. And then Zero says the line.
Ah! No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
He said the thing!
And the cutscene just ends. Next section. The story in this game is so awkward, no wonder I never paid attention to it.
It may be awkward, but it's infamous. They even recreated it for the end of Devil May Cry 1.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Cool. Yeah, the rest plays out pretty much the same, except the strategy for the general fight because it's just harder to reach his tiny head hitbox, like I said. Then there's the awful and unnecessary boss rematches, which are admittedly harder and take longer as Zero, because so many of them don't have good weapon weaknesses. But after that, Sigma finally reveals himself. I do like this dialogue of Sigma gaslighting Zero into thinking he killed Colonel and Iris on purpose, because he's evil just like Wily intended. And then we get a pretty great flashback cutscene detailing more about Sigma and Zero's origins for the first time. I always remember this specific cutscene fondly. Probably because it's a cool fight scene without much dialogue to fuck it up. Watching Sigma get got feels like a fitting reward for getting through Zero's harder campaign, though, and really helps with his characterization, as you see how ruthless the red hero can be compared to X's Golden Retriever energy. It is weird, though, when it cuts back to gameplay and Sigma Reaper seems surprised that Zero was once a Maverick. In the flashback, he had just asked for Zero to be studied after getting his arm ripped off.
Take that red Maverick to the repair center and call Dr. Kane. I wish to have that Maverick studied.
I think the dialogue is supposed to be telling Zero he was a Maverick, so Zero's memory is spotty. And the original Japanese translation makes that distinction more clear, but that's not how the English translation reads.
This is basically the big twist reveal that Zero is a creation of Dr. Wily, but not the same way as X. So Zero is a bit more chaotic and brutal because he was programmed with Wily's emotions and struggles to manage the good inside him. But it also makes him a more interesting character, which is probably why Inafune wanted him to be the star instead of X.
But at least we finally got the Mega Man Zero games, which tell much better stories than any of the X games.
Oh, no doubt. Zero 3 is still the GOAT!
We should go through those games. But anyway, we pretty much already covered this final fight. The hardest part is just doing all 3 phases on 1 health bar, but ever since I finally beat the game, I've since gotten the pattern down to get through the first and sometimes second phases without taking damage, so I at least start the 3rd part with full health. The 3rd phase is definitely harder as Zero, since the one head blows you away and has a very short window of vulnerability, so needing to be in melee range to hit it gets super tedious, but the in-between moments with colored heads are pretty easy to avoid, so it's more so time-consuming than hard. I just always got impatient and frustrated growing up. Plus, if you get a game over, you have to do the Maverick rematches again, and it's really just not worth it for how lame the end of the game is. That said, a skilled Mega Man gamer would probably rank this on the easier side of final bosses for the series. Right, Ty?
I don't think I'd say this is one of the easier final bosses, but it's definitely not the hardest either. If anything, having 2 different health bars made it worse, but it's fine.
After General randomly saves the day, there's one more cutscene of Zero having another dream as Wily, not my cat, looms over him, and Zero wonders if he really was meant to kill all those he cares about, like Iris. And then it cuts to credits with an ominous end tag about how Zero is destined to fight his friend in the future, and that future is coming.
Something they mentioned in X3, but failed to deliver until X5.
Again, I feel like there's a solid story to be mined here, but the English translation does not do it justice, and I think a lot of the nuance is lost. Granted, the Japanese translation doesn't do it that much better, but I think they intended a more complex story and just cut it for time and budget. But the gameplay is still some of the best in the series, and about half the levels are all-time favorites, with only a few stinkers or forgettable stages. It is a shame that X5 and 6 aren't better, though, because Zero as a character is much more fleshed out in those games. I'd just rather play as a half-baked Zero in this good game instead.
Yeah, I'd still say Zero's much more fun than X in this game, and it's admirable they managed to nail his playstyle on the first try.
Technically second, but we don't talk about the half-assed attempt to make him playable in X3. Even the X3 Zero mod is just okay, because he just doesn't feel right in that game. But this one, X8, and the Zero games are all peak for making him fun to play.
Hell, even his appearance in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is like a greatest hits of his moveset, to the point where he's the most busted character to play, right next to Virgil.
In closing, Mega Man X4 isn't perfect, but it's pretty darn great and one of my favorite games of all time, especially for how short it is. I've probably spent more time in it than most other games aside from maybe Super Metroid. And even then, it's usually randomizers and mods, whereas X4, I just run through normally. One of my fondest memories with this game, though, was a speedrun race against Ty and our friend Ben. Shout out Marvel Ziggy.
Love that guy. But yeah, I can agree with that assessment. I didn't grow up with this game, though, and our race a few years back was when I actually started playing it seriously. As of now, it's probably my top 5 Mega Man games alongside X1 and Zero 3. It's just fun to go back and play as either X or Zero, because they're different enough that no matter who you choose, you can just have a good fucking time. I had a blast playing through this game again, though it was different doing an X run for this video, so I have to thank Justin for inviting me along to experience the game differently than I'm used to. It's an honor and a privilege to be the second banana to the 10-year veteran Zero score. Happy anniversary, bro.
And I have to thank you, Ty, for joining me on this X-experience so that I don't have to play through the game again as X. I have played through this game countless times, and I've done a full run with X literally once. I just don't care to do it again. I love this game because of my boy.
You hear that, everybody? Justin gives 0 fucks about X.
Yep, I think that's the end of the video. Can't top it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to follow Ty on all the places. He mostly makes fighting game reviews on YouTube, but like me, does some other random content as well, so if you've enjoyed this, you'll enjoy him. Until next time, have fun. My main goal with the Zero run is to get to Split Mushroom as soon as possible because of the awesome double jump and Splint
Splash.
Spleen Splash, and we're taking a bath. And the most infamous cutscene plays out as she laments about her hopes that leprosy.
Wepoforce. Dr. Wowie.
Anyway, instead of talking it out, Zero fights Iris to death also, and the most infamous scene plays out as she laments about her hopes that... I was gonna say leprosy again.